Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special Friday night edition of Beyond the Pale. I'm your host, Darby Ham, and I'm very happy to be joined today by Matthew Ehret, who has been on the program once before, a brilliant Canadian author and researcher, and a brilliant American author and researcher, Anton Chaitkin. Thank you guys for being here. Matt, quickly, can you say a few words about what I wanted to do was introduce our subject tonight was the idea of Armageddon, nuclear war, uncontrolled aggression, no diplomacy. We've got the Ukraine and Russia thing. We now have the Israeli-Iran thing. Do you think all this is being are we out of control, or are forces trying to keep this under control right now? Oh, I can't hear you.
Yeah, that's a good starting point. And we had a chat last night. You called me up and we talked about the danger on so many levels, but culturally speaking, the those who are under the age of 40 or even under the age of 50 these days are having a very difficult time grasping the magnitude of what nuclear war actually means. And I I wasn't really an active political identity in the 80s, but I've seen the video footage. I've spoken to friends like Anton who lived it and made the point was made, and you made it as well last night in our chat, that we there was mass protests against nuclear war in the 70s and especially the 80s and even the 90s to a certain extent, but not so much because the Soviet Union melted down. But we came very close, and the population had a sense of what that means. There was a popular demand and a celebration that the U.S. would negotiate, that Reagan would open up the doors of communication with his Russian counterparts and speak to people who think differently, but with the idea of coming to a resolution. And today, we're so culturally screwed up because partially of the new social media shaping of our minds, the entertainment, the video game complex, the drug phenomenon that's become much more normalized now than it was 35, 45 years ago, that people think of nuclear war as something for their entertainment that they watch in movies or that they play out in video games, but it doesn't have the reality. But you look at what's going on in the world, and I mean, yeah, we have a color revolution dynamic coming in a very disturbing way to North America as a whole, but especially in the US. And people should be protesting. It's true in the world that's so crisis ridden as we're living through. But instead of protesting for the right things, a new economic system based on justice, a world of peace and collaboration, no, they're playing right into a chaos regime in the USA, and at the same time not even paying attention to the fact that Israel's just launched itself into something that could drag us all into a thermonuclear holocaust quicker than people realize. So Anton's somebody I've been speaking to a long time on these topics, and I know he's had his mind in a problem-solving modality for a long time, and I'm happy that Anton's also joining us to flesh this stuff out a little bit and talk about what got us here and what to do about it.
Yes, thank you, Anton. I remember, I'm so old, I remember when Nixon and Brezhnev had negotiations, and they negotiated the ballistic arms treaty, the IBM treaty. Remember that? And people were talking about that people back in those days, that was a good thing that we were, discussing these things and trying to actually get our humanity away from the brink of thermonuclear war. But now we seem to have all our pundits and everything in the establishment media, especially, pushing us on, egging it on as if it'd be a good thing. Like let's bluff those Russians. They won't dare attack us with nuclear weapons, no matter what we do to them. What do you think how has the dynamic changed since those days, Anton?
Well, on a personal note, my best friend and I went to the Empire State Building during uh, the Cuban Missile Crisis, I think it was, and we said we better just have a beer there at Ground Zero, as well as be anywhere else, because the nuclear war is going to really wipe us all out anyway. So, but I have learned some things and fought for some things that give me a kind of resolute optimism. I would like to stress the political potential in this in this global situation, and particularly in North America, in the U.S. And we have to start with the two essential points of Donald Trump's campaign for the presidency and his raison d'etre. The 2 points are stop the wars and rebuild the economy, and focusing on reindustrializing. And those are powerful, necessary, and very popular. And so the best way to look at those is let's have hands across the border and hands across the political divide, the party divide, to fight for these things. You're going to get a majority of people for them. Now, what is the enemy? We have um, an imperial interest, an imperial idea. It's not just an interest, financial interest, but it's an idea. It's a faction and an idea that we have to prevent the rise of independent sovereign nations all over the world. Those such truly independent countries, advanced countries, you have to be advanced to be independent. They'll have no use for overlords. Now, there are a number of ways that people have to understand how the public feels about some of these things. There's a religious idea. The public is fed from the empire with these distorted notions of religion, like, the Bible tells us we will always have wars, end times are coming, Satan is entitled to run the world. That's all from the empire. Doesn't come from the origins of the Jewish or Islamic or Christian religion. But what's the other side of that? What would be an opposing view? The opposing view, and this is consistent with the Republican ideal, the Republic, and that is that there are infinite resources in a universe under a divine creator, and that man has a special place in that, and that we have a destiny, an eternal destiny, and we don't need any self-appointed gods over us to rule over mankind and issue rules, the rules-based order, right? That goes against the religious sensibilities of people who are not only religious but scientific about it. It's a very scientific idea. Monotheism is quite a scientific idea. That is the unification of the sciences and the unity of the universe under a progressive principle. Not that there's always progress, but that there is an impulse for improvement, and that's built into our minds and our souls. So that's our human right is improvement. So they don't want to allow us to have that, and I think that there's a lot of evidence that keeps boiling up that the enemy, this imperial interest, consists of people with a truly satanic outlook. And I think I saw that in Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech. I've seen it in other people who are like with their eyes glazed. What was his name? The senator from Texas. You know who I mean?
Ted Cruz.
Yes, Cruz. Yeah, not the other guy. The other guy's just he's a typical politician. But this Cruz was going on like he was being fed things from the father of lies. So what are these strikes by Ukraine, organized by England, by Israel, organized by the underground of the military and intelligence agencies and the British hierarchy. That's all connected. That's all one thing with this hijacker of the Jewish religion. So what is that? The two strikes, Iran and Russia, the deep strike against the bombers, the strategic bombers. That, like you were talking about, we recognize our interest is not to have a nuclear war with Russia. How could that possibly be in anybody's interest? That's insane. So these two strikes happened right after each other. They were the same MO. You notice that?
Mm-hmm.
They both put these drones in place in Russia and in Iran.
Ahead of time, like a long time ago.
Yeah.
Come on, that's a single operation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right? And so what's the point? Trump was getting deals with China, with Iran, and with Russia.
He was trying to anyway.
I don't care about how bad these different deals were. We're going to get rare earths. We're going to do this or that. He talks about making the Gaza the Riviera. His whole base, don't look at him so much. Look at what the population that elected him and the broader population. Obviously many Democrats and independents in America hate free trade, hate the idea of deindustrialization. They want high wages. They think that they're entitled to these things. There shouldn't be these obvious usurpers running the world. So they are demanding peace. They want peace. They're not demanding it. So look at these protesters. People are going to protest against, what do you call it? The Trump cracking down on
the ICE raid,
the illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
So imagine if somebody had it in mind to be a real activist and wanted to seriously impact what was going on with these immigrants. The obvious thing is to say, let us now look at the situation south of the U.S. border in Latin America. The average farm wage in Mexico is $1 an hour. The average industrial wage is $5 an hour. How is that? What would happen if the wages there were raised simultaneously with the wages in North America being raised, USA and Canada, by having a return to 21st century productive industry with modern steel making, nuclear power plants, the space program, new materials engineering, high-speed trains that demanded steel. What would happen if we make Mexico part of that? If we develop the transport throughout the Americas, we sink or swim together, right? But emphasizing high wage industry and scientific high value farming and good at modern education in there and here, because the U.S. education is in the toilet. They don't educate for
I'll
production.
say one thing, Anton. This is what I really like about you in general, is that you completely change the framing, the geometry in which these conversations about geopolitical events occur. It's a different paradigm that you're saying is needed, and I get that. But I think it's lacking sorely, because people tend to fixate on events, and I've seen so many in the last 48 hours. I mean, we've all had our sights focused on the developments between Israel and Iran. I mean, my God, right? I mean, I'm taking in so many hours of podcasts and reading articles, and everybody is very myopic, spending hours and hours unraveling like the latest retaliations by Iran onto Israel's. And I mean, yeah, you don't want to ignore the mechanisms, but it's completely ignoring the fact that all of these things, whether it's in Ukraine, whether it's the geopolitical tensions caused or that are erupting in a very violent manner in the United States, between the dynamics set because of the many decades of toxic relationship economically that the U.S. has put onto its relationship with Mexico or even Gaza, right? You go back in time when whether it was Ukraine or whether it was the Israel-Arab relationship, if the economy is prospering, if people have a sense of hope, you don't get these types of resentments, intercivilizational, tribal resentments. You don't get that because people have a sense of the future, a cultural optimism, because they're able to make a wage, have a good living, know that their work means something for their society, and they're able to look to their neighbor who might sound different or look different and get beyond all of that and find common ground, right?
Plus,
So
and it's really happened in the last 2 decades. I've noticed that the limitations on traveling, like I remember Mark Twain famously said that if you want to become a well-rounded person, you should travel to other countries, and it should be the priority of American business and American economy is to make sure that everybody's well off enough that they can do this traveling, because then you begin to bring in these other cultures into your way of thinking. It tamps down the nativist reaction for war all the time and to get behind the latest, cause celeb for war. So that's the last 20 years, and 9/11 had a lot to do with that, of course, right? With taking off your shoes at the airport and all the scanning and stuff. And they've made it almost impossible for ordinary people to travel because of the economics. So almost all, is that part of the plan, you think, to keep us subservient? I remember I was talking on Jimmy Dore's show. They were talking about building the wall to keep the immigrants out, and I said, I think they're building the wall to keep the citizens in.
I wanted to just plug the book here.
Yeah.
It just came out, and in the chapter, one of the chapters on Lincoln, he said, just as part of running for president, that wars are a result of the want of sympathy for people we do not know. And so that is, he counterposed to that, tremendous increase in the use of science to increase productivity, so that people would be free of what he called money kings, land kings, and crown kings. And that's his campaign for the presidency. He said that we're going to have a growing population, and we can produce on a rising curve, and we have to. That's our mission. And so that idea that you were talking about of why we have these wars, get people being well-rounded. We are kept apart and in fear. We have a constant crisis, and we have a right to have a calm life and to get our excitement from what we do, from what we accomplish.
Yeah.
So that's Lincoln is called a conservative because he thought there shouldn't be a lot of wars and chaos all the time. He didn't want to have a war with the South. He wanted to eliminate slavery by having industrialization there.
Yeah,
So,
I think it sets the tone as well, touching on what RB also pointed out regarding walls to keep people in as well as out, as well as what you just said about Lincoln, is that there's a lot of people living today have only seen corrupt sociopaths wielding national power. And so they've become very jaded about the idea that the nation state should even exist as a viable entity, because it's been so abused and used as a tool of empire to take away our liberties and to create wars and enrich the 0.001%, right? We've seen so much of that. So people go the opposite extreme. And I think the example of Lincoln is a good one because it shows you what a better, healthier culture was able to do and mobilize as far as creating somebody who emerged out of a different type of world than the one we all were born into, Lincoln, but who was able to tap into certain universal ideas that he shaped his identity around, and reluctantly sought political power because he saw that if he didn't, then the nation was going to go to hell and probably humanity with it. So he did it, and he wielded political power in a manner which both stopped a major divide to conquer strategy at the time that the British Empire had unleashed to break up the Union, undo 1776, but he did it in a positive way to wield the Constitution in a manner that allowed for constitutional banking, that built these incredible mega projects, rail networks, industrial corridors, and a lot of it was sabotaged before it could really blossom, but it really demonstrated a proof of principle, which is very different from the type of more sick ideas we've seen with this bankers' nationalism, right? This type of perversion of nationalism, which has done damage, saying we need to bomb countries that had nothing to do with 9/11 for peace, because they hate our democracy. So we have to just give our consent and use the instruments of the nation, not for defense, but for offensive destruction. And you look at things today, like there's some sick ideas like the Iron Dome of Israel as a concept. Why would anybody want to model or emulate that Iron Dome logic with the entire paradigm that comes with the Iron Dome, which is that we're a victim society that has to constantly be able to subdue all of our neighbors who want to kill us all the time, which is like the doctrine out of which the Iron Dome of Israel emerged. And then all of a sudden we've got people wanting to apply it to North America. And I mean, it's sick on two levels, because like, number one, is it healthy to even have that attitude that the whole world wants to get you? China wants to destroy America, and the Mexicans are trying to do bad deals to steal our industry and invade us with whatever, and the Arab world hates our freedom still, and so we have to have this Iron Dome. So is that healthy? No. But also, is it, like you were saying, RB, is it really only just to saber rattle and project power on our neighbors who we think are naturally our enemies, or is it also partially to control the people in North America under this type of grid? And whether or not Trump knows this, I mean, I'd like to think he doesn't. He's not aware of this sickness and the dual use aspect of this, but it's a really bad idea. And instead, the type of conversation we should be having and should hear a lot more about sounds a lot more like what Anton was alluding to. We should be organizing for serious frontier infrastructure that benefits the people, banking policies that we should demand are going to put Wall Street into the dumpster when the economic collapse happens, and it will happen. We got to make sure that bomb blows up on Wall Street's plate and not on the plate of the average American citizen and the productive economy. And we should expect all of these things from our leaders and organize ourselves as citizens. And there's not enough of that happening. So it's a lot of dysfunctionality.
I think it's because of the divide and conquer techniques that the powers that ought not be, the ruling elite, whoever they may be. I don't know who they are, but I'm pretty sure that as Mark Twain said, it's not a conspiracy. Who they, it's every meeting of the legislature, every meeting of the, of Congress. That's where it's all happening. It's right out in the open. And like Bilderberg Group, Council on Foreign Relations, they all work together. And it seems to be it's not just a North America thing. It's like worldwide. It's New World Order. The Chinese are involved. Everybody's going like I think the Ukraine war is very telling, because we both know that if the Russians wanted to, they could have turned Kiev into Gaza within a year and conquered all of Ukraine if they wanted to. Instead, it's this drawn out war that keeps that seems to be hand in hand. As George Orwell said in 1984, the war is not meant to be won; it's meant to be continuous, and it seems to be all over the world. These wars that just drag on and on. They keep the civilian populations of both countries that are supposedly at each other's throats under the pall of this idea of the 2-minute hate. You got to support your country, patriotism over all that stuff, and it justifies the censorship. It justifies limiting the power of your people to actually travel and meet other cultures and stuff. It all seems to be working hand in hand, and all the countries seem to be in on it. So are we really at the brink of Armageddon? Are we really, really worried about these nuclear wars? Or have all these countries come to an understanding and say, hey, we won't unleash our nuclear arsenals, but we'll constantly saber rattle, we'll constantly have these small, low-grade wars where we send our the soldiers in to come back, and then when they do get back, we'll celebrate them in parades and we'll keep the patriotism going. but your enemy could switch next week, just like in 1984. It could be
Well,
Eurasia next week or Oceania next week. Who knows?
there's a different history than is in this Orwell story.
Yeah.
We have a different history, and that is it's a fight between two different outlooks.
Mhm.
One of the sides was for a radical upgrading of man's powers. The other side was for constant war. And the outstanding feature of the real history, and that's what my current series of books is about, is that the people who actually did the biggest advances in industrial and scientific advances that raised the standard of living, those people who did the advances were always acting at the same time for the benefit of foreign countries. They wanted them to rise in power, completely contrary to the imperial idea. And they were fighting the imperial interest for the right for our country to develop.
Yeah.
Now, the political potential now, I think one part of that is that in the ranks of the Trump circle, there is only a minority that is for these wars.
They seem to be vocal, though.
Well, they're vocal. They're powerful. They're part of they're in the apparatus of the oligarchy from London and from these international bankers and so forth, and the offshore system, the completely criminal operators, interlocked with the other secret establishment. So we have a majority. We have a majority, I would say, of Democrats and independents. But let's go back to this Trump circle. The people who are willing to stand now and to fight for what the voters want, realizing, understanding that you could have a 70% majority, easy, of the whole population supporting a government that was acting powerfully for the interest of the people. And that's a wide interest of people of different walks of life and different stations to raise the whole. So we can stand for these 2 points. Stop these wars, shut them down, and rebuild the economy.
Yeah.
And so this requires a very deep rethinking of what we have done in the past to make people come forward. Before we were talking in this program, I was talking to you, RB, about the idea of optimistic versus pessimistic, literature and culture. And, most of people in your generation and Matt's generation have grown up. I'm a little bit older. I'm 82. But most of recent generations have grown up in a completely pessimistic culture. And this is really, to a great extent, it's based on the distortion of our history, censorship, and to a great extent, but distortion of history and distortion of religion. And the literature that's dystopian, is from that. And you can, if you don't have any physical progress, if you don't have progress in living standards, if things are collapsing and so forth, then you're optimistic. But if you couple a glimpse, and I'm trying to get that glimpse across to people in these books of how we did this, who we are really, all right, if you couple that history with the facts, the political facts that a majority are against these wars.
Yeah.
So you may have people who say to a pollster, I support Israel. But do those people really support these wars? I don't think so.
Right.
You know, you may have people that say they don't like communism, right? Okay, the Chinese Communist Party. They use these words, but do they really want to have a war with China? No. Who's for that? Do you want to have a war with Iran? Nobody. Who's for that? What's the point of that? Aside from you're a Satanist and you think human beings should be destroyed. So that we have an opportunity now in a crisis to say we have the right to have self-government. And self-government today has two meanings. We have the right to elect people that do what we want them to do. If this guy doesn't do it, we'll get somebody else. But that's our right. If we're betrayed, we have to understand that. But still, we are the majority. We have that power.
Yeah.
The other meaning of self-government is we have the right to have a government that serves our interests economically. That's self-government too. That's tariffs. That's protection of industry. That's high wage industry. That's an education that equips the younger people to have a productive life. We have that right. That's our right. That's self-government. It's the same thing as fighting against slavery. The self-government of a slave. He's not governing himself as somebody else governs him.
I think we let Matt take over. That's great optimistic outlook and everything. But when you bring it back to let's say what the AI culture is now coming into, talking about automation taking away people's jobs, what are you going to educate them for? You can't code anymore because AI is going to be doing the coding. What do you think is the future for education?
Is AI going to build high-speed trains throughout the country and steel mills?
That would work.
Well, hold on. I guess here the thing is that
too much military, too much.
Yeah.
What are these chips for?
Okay.
Yeah, you need chips for electronic equipment, but the thinking that you're going to orient industrialization to the military economy, that's a loser. That doesn't function. And they don't want to have any kind of discussion about that because it's fake. It's completely fake.
Yeah, so
I think
the
economy is a fake economy, and it's falling apart. It's no good. You can't run anything with that. You can't run wars with that. You can threaten people, and you can blow up the world with the existing nuclear weapons. But that's a loser.
Yeah, and what listening to you, Anton, I mean, I'm reminded of that famous Shakespearean quote from Julius Caesar: "The fault is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings." And I get that's a very important message for people to internalize, because we've all taken on, I think too many people have taken on a victim attitude amidst this entire downward decline over the last several decades, especially towards corruption and technocracy. And because we've taken on the sense that all of these bad things are happening to us, we've abrogated our own natural responsibilities that healthier generations long past, before we were born, had more normalized, as a sense that, okay, if I have these rights, it's because I respect the fight that gave me these rights, the people that bled and died, and the responsibilities to risk a lot to defend and improve upon those rights and those powers that I have. Because if we were born 800 years ago in Europe, we'd be living probably in complete illiteracy, ignorance, filth, with a life expectancy of maybe 32 years of age. And God knows, what crazy infant mortality mothers would have to suffer from. So we're not. We have all of these different things that we take for granted, and because we take for granted, we don't fight for them, and they get stolen. They get stolen slowly from us because we get docile, right? And I think the consumer society thing definitely made us very soft and docile and cut us off. It atomized us from those past traditions. But as well, like you watch some of these old movies. I can't watch new movies anymore. Like I try. I love movies, but I try, and I feel I have to stop 90% of the time. I have to stop the movie. I have to stop the show before I even make it through to the end, because I could just feel the manipulative psychological manipulation that's embedded in so many of these Western shows and Western movies. But I gotta listen to Frank Capra movies. I gotta watch It's a Wonderful Life. I gotta watch John Doe, or these movies from the 30s and the 40s and maybe 50s, and Judgment at Nuremberg, 7 Days in May, things like that. in order just to like find pleasure in the art of literature and stories performed in cinema. And you get a sense that humanity was not so damn cynical, because all of the films today always feature, if they're going to talk about the future, it's some dystopic future, post-nuclear war, or a world that's going through a nuclear war, some cataclysmic holocaustic type scenario with a comet or something that's going to blow up and kill 95% of the world population. Then everybody is just going to survive. Then the whole movie and the whole show is just about surviving in a zombie apocalypse, right? There's and the humans are fighting the humans. There's no idea of
Stupid.
harmony of
Pretty
interests.
stupid, isn't it?
Was that?
Why should we fight each other? It's stupid.
But
I mean,
right? But they're teaching us subliminally what human nature is as this Hobbesian beast against beasts. And they slip it under our radar, and then people start expecting that in the way that the world works, you know. And of course, the world must always fight. So, getting back to what you were saying, RB, about like would the oligarchy like to see the world in this Orwellian divided situation of East Asia and Oceania and Eurasia in perpetual war without going maybe nuclear? I think, yeah, the oligarchy would love that type of dynamic, and you could see like how they've been trying to provoke and push China into a corner and push Russia into a corner because they want these countries that are currently successful because they rejected the Hobbesian philosophy of governance. And because they rejected it, that's why they've been successful so far and have probably saved the world many times over the last 20 years. But that's where creativity resides, when you escape the Hobbesian trap of each against all game theory crap, right? And you start thinking on this higher future orientation of human beings as being the source of value, being we're the source of what causes value. We discover laws of the universe and transmit them to our children and make life better. And we can form economic decisions, foreign diplomatic relationships based on that cultural policy that we encourage based on those conceptions. But, I've listened to John Mearsheimer, as somebody who's celebrated as a voice of sanity, and compared to the crap out there, he seems to be. But at the same time, he's a neocon who's been threatening China, saying like, China is an empire, but that's good. We want you to go and take Taiwan. We want you to impose your will onto the many. To go take Philippines, take Korea, take more, and because you're predictable. Like all of these neocon elements have been provoking Russia, China into acting like animals. They want them because when you get into that mindset of feeling like it's fight or fly, now all of your behavior will be predictable. And this oligarchy, if they're anything, they're power hungry. They like control. They don't like uncertainty. So they would love that if these countries got accepted this game, this Orwellian game that they're in. Now those countries have not embrace that. They're still operating outside of that. But I think that's the important thing, is that most people today listening to this show don't even believe that that's even possible. That's why they don't understand what made Russia viable and good, what made China viable and good. How could it build the Belt and Road? How could it kick out George Soros and generate all of these productive mega projects that have pulled 1 billion people out of poverty? What made us good? What was John F. Kennedy tapping into? 60 years ago. They don't know that. It's been forgotten that is even a thing, which is scary.
Let's listen to John F. Kennedy. Hold on a sec here. I got to unmute it.
Attention to our common interests and the means by which those differences can be resolved. And if we cannot end now our differences, at least we can help make the world safe for diversity. For in the final analysis, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's future, and we are all mortal. So let us not be blind to...
So I wanted to just play that famous. It was called the Peace Speech, and it's the last speech he gave before they decided to kill him. But he was talking about the Russian children are the same as our children. We all inhabit this small planet. He was calling for an end of the Cold War. He was calling for nuclear test ban treaties, all that stuff back then. he was talking about a Peace Corps. He was the last optimistic president we may have had. He was the one who started the whole idea of progressing towards living in harmony with our so-called enemies, and it's a very Christ-conscious thing, right?
Yeah.
Love your enemy as your neighbor. So I think,
Can I say something about religion?
yeah.
Okay. So I watched Benjamin Netanyahu make his speech during this attack, and I was thinking, okay, you're really, really violating the commandment to honor your father and mother. And that is that instead of uh, helping these monsters in this faction to try to incinerate most of humanity, how about honoring the fathers and mothers of the Jews who in former times contributed the part of the great music and science and in medicine to improve mankind. There he is doing this horrible thing. And
So I think we should play a little bit of it so we can understand where you're coming from. Okay?
all right, yeah.
Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons. In recent
Everything he said so far is a lie and provable.
Total lies. I mean, everything about it is a lie. But
let's go on. I want to. It gets worse.
years, Iran has produced
the positive side of this.
Oh no! But let it run a little bit. Just let it, unless you have you. Yeah,
No,
just give it a few more seconds.
Because he gets to the point where he starts justifying war. He does justifying preemptive war.
Because the Bible tells us we should do this, right?
Enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. And if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival. 80 years ago, the Jewish people were the victims of a Holocaust perpetrated by the Nazi regime. Today, the Jewish state refuses to be a victim of a nuclear Holocaust perpetrated by the Iranian regime. Now, as Prime Minister, I've made it clear time and again, Israel will never allow those who call for our annihilation to develop the means to achieve that goal. Tonight, Israel backs those words with action. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weaponization program. We targeted Iran's main enrichment facility in Natanz. We targeted Iran's leading nuclear scientists working on the Iranian bomb. We also struck at the heart of Iran's ballistic missile program.
Stop this. Stop
Last year.
All right, RB, I think Anton's had enough.
Disgusting. But look, just I want to get to the point about the Christian religion as well. But there's three American presidents had a different idea than this. Franklin Roosevelt promoted the fast development of Iran as the model for developing the whole underdeveloped sector, and let them use their oil and have the British steal it. That was his idea. That's his report during the Tehran conference. Eisenhower had the Atoms for Peace program, giving the different parts of the world nuclear power plants. That was the idea of it. Obviously, the Dulles brothers had different ideas. The British had different ideas, but that was his proposal, particularly for Iran. John Kennedy proposed nuclear power plants all over the world, the whole fuel cycle, so we didn't have to worry about the waste. Use it for the fuel, and use it to make desalting plants, and have that be a common interest program between those rivals of Hindus and Muslims, and Jews and Muslims, and U.S. and communists and capitalists and so forth. So should does the Bible, as Netanyahu lied, does the Bible teach us that we should bomb the USA of Franklin Roosevelt and Eisenhower and Kennedy? I don't think so. I think that was us at our best. Now go back to certain Christians in our history. I have in mind medical missionaries who went to Asia and wanted to help people there, and they often were believers in modernization and republics, and they didn't like imperialism. And they had an idea of Christianity which was coherent with a republic. I've written a play about that, and the guy that went to Siam, Dan Beach Bradley. But this is a very common phenomenon of Americans, whether they're Christians or not, going to other countries and being offering things to other countries to show what we can do as problem solvers. But that's certainly a Christian idea. And then there was this guy came from Pennsylvania who developed Colorado, William Palmer. Famous in Colorado. He built the national railways of Mexico also, and the railways in Colorado. But he was a Quaker. The Quakers have stuck to this anti-war philosophy as a Christian idea. So this guy, Palmer, was an abolitionist, an industrialist, and a believer in the Christian faith, meaning that it's murder to kill people in a war or any other time. Nevertheless, he was torn by what the the secessionists were doing to try to end the American Republic, and so he volunteered and put against his conscience. He put what do you call it, a brigade and regiment together, and he won a Medal of Honor as a Union soldier. He also fought against war crimes by the Union side in the South, and he was notorious among some people for doing that. So this is a man with a conscience who said that it is intolerable to me that we should have this war. I have to do it. I'm forced into this thing. But this is evil. And there's a tension there, and we can't ever lose that tension. We lose our humanity if we lose that tension. It's uncomfortable. Yes, we have to keep that uncomfortable feeling. War is not something other than murder. We have to avoid it. Power and strength is one way to avoid it, and competence and industrial might and cooperation with other countries that have the same thing. But we have to have that fear that we are violating, God's laws, and we're going to be punished for it if we do this murder. We have to have that fear in us all the time. So that's the history of Christianity and Judaism at its best. And now you have these people who, unfortunately, have put their Christianity and their Judaism into the service of really satanic imperialists to carry out unimaginably bad ends. And so aside from being ashamed of them or whatever, we have the right to have, a restoration of the idea of what is sacred and what is higher. What was Lincoln's idea? He wasn't a dystopian. His two favorite cultural things, aside from really good jokes, were Verdi and Shakespeare. And he, every chance he got, he went to the opera for Verdi, and he went to Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
So that's his. That's his. And he was constantly beset by depressing and horrifying things. But he's an optimist. He fought for that. You could see this tension on his face
Yeah.
by maintaining this horrifying, responsibility for this killing that was wrong. The killing was wrong,
Yep.
and that he took the world's troubles on his shoulder, and that we have a chance to do that. And but he had fun also, like Franklin had fun, like all of us. We have fun, don't we, doing these things, what we have to do, especially if we have a chance to really put up a good fight. If we
Yeah.
get a field to fight on, so to speak,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
That's
I guess that's for me as well. Something that I think about a lot is this importance of having a connection to a sense of the divine, but not just any kind. Because a lot of people are hungry for spiritual food. Like the soul needs food. It needs hope. It needs you can't just feed the body. You need to feed the soul. There is something else, but how that works is not so. There's not a consensus on it, and there shouldn't be like a one size fits all idea of how to satisfy those needs. But we've seen that in our current sort of new age theosophical sort of spirituality that's so prevalent amongst the drug culture, people are increasingly doing drugs partially because they want to escape the crappiness of the world that they're living in. So there's an escapism aspect of it, just like there is for the entertainment, the video games as well, but the drugs especially. But there's also a spiritual aspect that I'm seeing more and more pervasive, where people have been duped into thinking that when they're getting high, when they're microdosing, when they're whatever, they're actually touching God. They're actually getting access to the divine and blah, blah, blah. And it's making them worse people. Like I could see their power of thinking with their mind and their conscience rigorously intact is dissipating fast. So to be able to like look at case studies like Lincoln, who was a deeply spiritual man, but he fed his spirit off of what they call, like good religion, right? Like the truth is written on the hearts of all men. He immersed himself in rigorous studies of Shakespeare. That's not easy to like read Shakespeare or even follow a Shakespearean performance. It's very yeah, and he would memorize it and drop bombs in the course of bombs. He would drop Shakespeare bombs in the course of his State of the Union addresses and in his engagement with just his fellow congressmen and senators that he had to organize. And like you said, he was also an impeccable joke teller as well. He'd throw people into nonlinear sort of spaces just through his ability to tell a story with a punchline. And again, like that quality of freedom with rigor, which also I guess you find it in Verdi's compositional performances. You see it in Beethoven, you see it in Brahms, you see it in the culture that we have less and less. We need to get back in touch with that, I guess is what I'm saying. Like that's our heritage, the best of civilization that had people who saw, like Bach saw his compositions as prayers to God. He wasn't trying to skip steps. He was like, that's why each performance, or not each composition has like this deep weight, and it touches on the immortal. Like we forget about all the 99% of other composers who lived at the same time as Bach did, but we don't remember their names. We remember Bach. We remember the few who were able to like tap into that source and transmit it, through every generation. And so it's not a surprise when we see both the Germans, Americans, the Chinese, and Tiananmen Square, whatever the hell that was. But still, like whatever we see these big historic moments of crisis, there's a resonance with Beethoven's Ninth Symphony as a universal sort of anthem for humanity that it does reflect. And so, like you were saying, what Netanyahu is shitting on right now and risking annihilating, because he's like talking about how Hitler tried to exterminate us and Iran wants to exterminate us. And so we're going to exterminate them first. You're really risking welcoming in a massive retaliatory onslaught from so many people around the world who now hate you. If they didn't hate you, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago, they're increasingly hating you now. He's doing the worst. Anybody who actually didn't want to be responsible for a nuclear holocaust and the extermination of the Jews would do the opposite of everything Netanyahu is doing. So he's actually like erasing not just those living today in that area,
Yeah.
which he's risking through his idea of greater Israel that'll be consolidated when we build Solomon's temple and kill the heifers, and then just we can expand into the space of all of these territories that have these unfortunate Arabs and Muslims living there. But we can, so you got that, but you're getting rid of the heritage, the cultural legacy of the best of Judaism as well, that produced these amazing cultural Renaissance movements around the world. That's also what you're getting rid of. It boggles the mind that people would tolerate this, whether in Israel or anywhere for that matter.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with the whole fact that their culture has internalized the Holocaust to a degree that it's become their primary reason for the things they do, for what they're doing in Gaza. Like right now, they're the onslaught in Gaza, and they're taking this opportunity right now for an onslaught in the West Bank. They want to completely annihilate and remove all the people there, take it over for themselves. Amazingly, in the West Bank, that includes a lot of Christians, and in Gaza, Christians too. Christian churches have been attacked and stuff, but it all gets thrown underneath the rug of this idea, the Christian Zionists. I'm more afraid of them than the Zionists. The Christian Zionists who believe that they have to have that all the Jews in the world have to go back to Israel at some point, and at that point we will have Armageddon, and then. Once you got enough bodies piled up high enough, Jesus will be able to walk down on the pile of bodies and come back down, and he'll come bearing his righteous sword. And at that point, all the Jews will have to submit to being Christians, or else they'll be smited, and all the non Christians will have, and then we'll have the 1,000-year reign of peace, which echoes, of course, Hitler's 1,000-year Reich. And they call themselves a chosen people. What's the difference between that and the master race? I mean, all the things that were perpetrated on them during the Holocaust, they are now perpetrating on their neighbors who weren't even the ones responsible for the Holocaust in the first place.
Let's go back to this point I made about the two attacks, the two dangerous, nuclear war provoking attacks by the Ukrainian drones into Russia, and the Israeli operatives and things placed inside of Iran. This is a single idea of the war faction in the West to try to head off the advance of the peace and development forces. And so, if you're thinking about Israel as in isolation, any kind of analysis based on, yes, I mean, there is the whole idea of Israel in the British interest going back to the 19th century, and very explicit about setting up some sort of courageous race that will be a fighter for the British Empire in that spot. But really, I would look at it slightly differently than just that, about an imperial interest there. What was Hitler, and what is this thing now in the Middle East? This Armageddonist machine. Both of them are promoted by this essentially London-centered faction that wants near extermination as a way of keeping themselves in power. That's what we're looking at.
I'm still here. I'm just off camera.
Evil right in the middle of it. You can't isolate it to, some sort of. There is no such thing now as a local history of some country, let alone a local place. But a country, no country has its own history separate from world history. And the world history that we're dealing with here is the opposition of the nation builders in Europe and USA, which became really the USA trying to spread that nation building idea after our revolution. Their opposition to this really exterminating power of the Anglo-Dutch monetary system and the British Empire, and they're engines for mass crisis, mass destruction. They did this with Japan in the late 19th century by building the navy in Britain, in England. The Japanese navy was built in England and unleashed on Russia and then later the USA. The Japanese also built their own, but the British got them started in that direction. America was helping them to build industry, to build up Japan as a positive power in the East. But so the Hitler machine, the idea of a war, a berserker, was to end Russia and end Germany as nations. And this and other purposes. So the same thing is going on now with Israel, and it's particularly the idea of attacking one country after another insanely, right? I mean, what you said, Matt, about incurring hostility. Yeah, but it's not that tells you, that tips you off about where the actual direction of this comes. Israel has all of this money, all of this technology, all of this spy technology and expertise and so forth, all put to bad, increasingly bad purposes. But that's not where the direction of this really comes from. This is a faction in the West.
Mm-hmm.
And they're a distinct minority that is desperate to keep their power by nearly or completely exterminating the whole world.
Yeah. You guys want to hear something interesting?
Yeah.
I just picked this up on my feed right now, but the Russian ambassador to the UN, or the UN representative, just accused, literally minutes ago, England. He said, quote, there was likely coordination between Israel and British special services in the attacks on Iran. Immediately after the Israeli strikes, the British intelligence, sheltered the Israeli aviation, which participated in the strikes, in their bases in Cyprus. So that's interesting. I didn't listen to the whole speech, but the fact that he's coming out directly days after Lavrov called out also British intelligence for their role in provoking the Operation Spider's Web against Russia just a few days earlier. Very interesting stuff, eh?
And right now, there's Americans are refueling those Israeli warplanes over Syria because now that al-Bashar has been deposed and they've got their ISIS, al-Qaeda client state in Syria. Syria has now just become a way for Israel basically doesn't have to worry about them anymore. So everything that's been going on, like as General Wesley Clark said, the 5-year plan for the 7 countries they're going to overturn, it's Iran's the last one standing. So that's
you said America is refueling those aggressive planes.
Yeah.
Trump said America was not involved in this attack. And he's right in one respect, that the intelligence agencies or underground, connections of military companies, private military companies, and the Five Eyes intelligence connection and so forth, that is decidedly not America. They are using the United States, or the shell of the United States, the former power of the United States, to destroy American influence in the world, the actual USA. So to the extent that the United States exists, it exists against the empire. It was the leading anti-imperialist country in the world. How many people know about that now? How many people would be willing to even discuss that now? But that is where we have to locate our identity.
Well, definitely, yeah. Trump either knows or he doesn't know, and definitely, I would imagine that elements within the American deep state, very high up, did know and collaborated with the Israelis.
For sure.
Whether or not Trump was a part of that, I'm open to either possibility. I need more evidence on that part, but it does seem to be the case that he was working towards an honest effort at creating some form of off-ramp with the Russians as well, who offered to build 8 nuclear reactors for the Iranians just days ago.
Right.
That was something that definitely had some collusion between the U.S. and the Russians to do that. Now, Israel sensing, or not Israel, but this Zion neocon end times faction sensing that it was possible that the Wesley Clark program, not Wesley Clark program, but the program that was exposed by Wesley Clark was slipping away. They might have launched it. If I should find out evidence that Trump was himself and has been actually complicit in it, that would piss me off. But we'll see. What's Putin up there saying?
I just wanted this came across my feed 8 hours ago, and this is his remarks. What's going on?
Понимаете, я уже общался
I have already spoken to 3 U.S. presidents.
с одним президентом США, и с другим, и с третьим.
They come and go, but politics stays the same at all times.
Президенты приходят и уходят, а политика не меняется. Знаете почему?
Do you know why?
Потому что очень сильна
Because of the
власть
powerful
бюрократии.
bureaucracy.
Вот человека избрали,
The
он
person's
приходит
elected,
с одними
they may
идеями, к
have
нему приходят люди с
some good
кейсами,
ideas. Then
хорошо
people
одетые,
with briefcases
в
arrive, well dressed,
темных,
wearing
например,
dark suits,
костюмах, но только не с
fine,
красным
the
галстуком,
red
а с черным,
ties, since they wear
или с
black
темно-синим.
ties or
И
dark.
начинают
These
объяснять,
people
как
start
нужно
explaining how
делать.
things are done.
И все сразу меняется.
Instantly, everything
Понимаете?
changes.
Это происходит
This is what
от
happens
одной
with every
администрации к другой.
Changing
Вот,
things is not easy, and I say this without
что-то
any irony.
изменить. Это достаточно сложное дело. Это, я говорю без всякой иронии.
It is
Это не
not that
потому, что
someone
кому-то
does
не
not
хочется,
want
потому
to,
что
but
это сложно.
because it is a hard thing to
Обама.
do.
Он же
Take Obama, a forward-thinking man,
продвинутый человек,
morally
очень человек либеральных взглядов.
moral, a Democrat,
Правда?
not pledged to
Демократ.
shut down
Он же
Guantanamo
перед
Bay
выборами своими обещал
before the election.
закрыть Гуантанамо. Сделал?
Did he do it? No, he did not. And may
А
I
почему? Он
ask
что,
why
не
not?
хотел? Очень
Not
хотел. Я
want
уверен,
to do
что
it?
хотел.
He wanted to.
Но не
I'm sure he
получилось.
did, but it did
Он
not work out.
искренне к этому
He
стремился.
sincerely
Не
wanted to do it,
получается.
did
Не
not
так все
succeed,
просто.
since it turned out to be very
Но
complicated.
это не самый
This is
главный
not the
вопрос,
main
хотя
issue,
это
however,
важно.
even though it
Это
is
трудно себе
important.
представить. Да?
Since
Люди
it
в
is hard to
кандалах
fathom
ходят там
people that have
уже
been walking there in chains for decades
десятилетиями,
without
без суда
trial
и
or
следствия.
investigation.
Ну, представьте себе,
Can you
Францию
imagine
тогда
France
сделали,
or
или
Russia
Россию.
acting this way?
С потрохами бы сожрали
We
уже
would have,
давно.
this would have been a
Нет,
disaster. But it is
судебная
possible in the United
до
States
сих пор
continues
продолжается.
to this day.
Вот,
This
кстати,
refers to the question on
к
democracy,
вопросу
by the way.
демократии. Но,
I refer to this
но я
example
сейчас
just
не
to
для
show
этого
that it's not
привел
as simple as it
пример
may
этот
seem.
привел. Я привел потому, что
That said, I am
просто.
cautiously optimistic,
Но
and I think that
все-таки
we can and should
у
be
меня
able
есть
to reach
определенная
agreements
доля
on key issues.
сдержанного оптимизма. Мне кажется,
Okay, so that was what he was talking about when Trump got in the first time.
I want to disagree with with a certain emphasis there. Putin knows certain things that don't come up in this film clip. Whether he said any of it at that time, I don't know. But he knows people in who have a strategic education know that the United States underwent a tremendous, what might be called a seismic cultural change and change in strategy after the murder of Kennedy. And it was shifted a few times before that, but this was a tremendous change. The whole country changed. So what's involved with that is a different identity, which is vital to survival and must be retrieved. That's incumbent upon us to fight for that. We have, as I mentioned, a popular idea about being entitled to a better life. And so whether or not Trump is able to do or even wants to do what he said should be done, these things have to be done. We have to get a rebuilding of the economy. We have to have a serious program for moving for a 21st century infrastructure and industry in the United States.
That's good, and that may be true. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, when Miriam Adelson gave him that $40 million for his campaign, ever since then he's been a cuck for the Zionists.
I'm not talking about Trump. I'm talking about here. Imagine if somebody like I saw Jeffrey Sachs, and he was saying that Trump is fully complicit in Israel. That and even Tucker Carlson was saying this, and to a great extent, it's true. The Republican Party, with Trump participating in this, has joined the Democratic Party in this idea of destructiveness by through Israel as a substitute for the interests of everybody. But what do these people propose? What action do they propose? What action does somebody propose who says that America is, in a sense, rightfully, its identity is an imperialist monster? What action do they propose? They actually propose bowing to the weight of the enemy and submitting to Satan's rule over the world. Basically, that's their outlook. What they're not proposing any other action. What I'm proposing is a monkey wrench in this politics. People have to be able to say openly that the United States changed and was changed by people who have always been the enemies of the United States. And that is the British, or later it was called Anglo-Americans. It's a transatlantic would-be dictatorship. It goes back to the Tories in our revolution. It was in the slave owners, it was in the Boston and New York financiers who destroyed Reconstruction, tried to sabotage that, and successfully did so. They didn't want us to be industrialized. They look at Morgan's firm, was put into the United States in 1872 from London, set up on purpose to destroy the nationalists who were building the steel industry and control the other big industries, and were building everything and wanted to make a better country. They were put in there to stop this and to destroy it and to control it and to bottle it up. Tried to stop Edison from building power plants. So Morgan comes in and takes over industry along with Rockefeller. They didn't build any industry. They took it over. And then in a later generation, the same families, the same institutions, all of it directly connected to our London enemies, deindustrialized the United States. They took our industry down. Finally. Morgan in control of U.S. Steel was opposed to the investment tax credit proposed by Kennedy.
But Anton, do you think that this
steel mills? They were opposed, even though they owned the steel mills.
I know,
they didn't want to take the profits because they were committed to crushing actual American Republic influence in the world.
But how do we get back to that concept of
right to be those people? Everybody has the right to have a high standard of living. How do we get back to that?
Yeah.
You have a Republican Party. You have a Democratic Party.
Yeah. No. Can I just say
the lines and put a monkey wrench in there? We have that right. We won the election with Trump on those 2 points. The Democrats lost it. And the Democratic Party was sabotaged by this oligarchy. Where's the party of FDR and Kennedy? We have the right to have a better life. That's all right. And
can I say something?
For that.
Yeah. Can I just throw something in there? Yeah. I think like what Anton is getting at, because like we're at a moment now where the collapse is upon us, right? Like it's here now. We're living through it, and it's the consequence of a multi-generational toxic idea that we've tolerated for too long, which has made us increasingly, I guess you could say, even participate in the plan for our own self-annihilation. So Anton's getting across conceptually, I know what he's doing, and it's the right thing to do. It's like, if we're not gonna die, then the type of attitude and identity that we will necessarily have to adopt from among our population is exactly what he's talking about right there. Like, that's a society that is capable of not dying when the axe is coming down. Because it's coming down now. And most people listening to this, I'm sorry to say this, your life is going to be shit. Like, there's going to be mass death like you've never imagined it. I've studied dark ages. I've studied collapses. It's going to be fucking bad. So if we're going to avoid that, the type of mental state, as well as understanding of those certain dynamics that Anton's put forth in his books over the years, and he's written a lot of books going through this, is that every inch of progress that has been won industrially, scientifically for humanity that's allowed us to overcome limits to growth was never given to us by the oligarchy. It's always been fought for. And those stories of how it was fought for would give us a lot of tools to fight today and solve problems today. But we don't have that thirst, that hunger to make those discoveries. So because of that, we're moving towards our own self-annihilation. And I think that that's the tough sort of bitter pill that we got to swallow at the end of the day, is like, we are complicit in this mass genocide, unless we make the qualitative shift of attitude in general. Now, how that's going to look when you have so many bad things and transhumanists and all of these bad things in power, it can be a little demoralizing. It's true. I get demoralized as well. But despite that, it's necessary. It's necessary to have that idea that we have to organize leadership qualities within the population to make it happen.
We're better and smarter than these oligarchs are. We're better than them. We've done everything.
Sure.
So whenever you have a discussion, a public discussion about politics, you have to make jokes at their expense, and you have to show that we have done beautiful things, and where we have done crimes, like annihilating different parts of the Indians, taking the land of a settled agricultural community of American Indians, when there's plenty of land for everybody in the North American continent. You didn't need to steal it land. We could have coexisted, and we could have given them the means to join our supposedly more advanced society. Well, every time that we did something wrong, this was, a departure from the mission of improvement that we celebrate. Yeah. So from that standpoint, we can see that what we're doing now, under the misleadership of liars, of mass murderers. I'm talking about in England and USA, in this clique, and in Israel, that's connected to that USA, the London used to be the London New York axis. So we are right. What we're doing now is the kind of departure from our mission on a massive scale. So let's cut it out. Let's stand up against this, but stand up for our right to have a better life. That's the promise. The Democrats are they're having a big discussion in the Democratic Party about why they lost and how they're losing, because they lost the working class. Well, okay. People in the Democratic Party, which is a minority, and people who are independent, which is a large part of the population, and people who are Republicans, have the same idea that we have the right to have industry and high wage jobs. And people have that right all over the world. Mexico has that right. And it would be our interest to have them have high wages. They wouldn't be forced to be refugees and come up here, right? And cut our wages. So this is a simple idea. It's a simple approach. Cuts through a lot of baloney. But the fact is that the other faction can only win by these wars. How could they possibly get people off of a program of rebuilding the USA, except by having, people paralyzed with fear? So just recognize that we had this past. We have electricity. We have houses with roofs. Most of us do. And for any of us to keep that stuff, we have to fight for it, and we're entitled to those things. So that entitlement is a good idea. We're entitled to a better life, and our children are entitled to a better life, and we're entitled to have children and to be able to support them, and to have children that will support us in our old age. Who can afford to. And so that's our right. That's human rights. That's the four freedoms of Franklin Roosevelt. That's not imperialism. He was an American president, powerful American president, and he went against imperialism in the second phase of his life, not in the first phase.
No.
So this is our background, and this is our future. Our future, the future of the human race, is with America coming back as a world leader in industry and science for the benefit of everybody, and building up its own population's living standards. Everybody should be for that.
Don't you think the international oligarchs knew that? That's why they've targeted America with all this mass immigration. That's why they hate the Bill of Rights.
That's right.
They attacked that through the COVID tyranny. They especially attacked that, right?
But we used to be a very popular country. Not now. We lost our influence. So let's get it back. It's a simple concept. Progress, which goes against the Malthusian green agenda, and goes against the banking interest. If this offshore banking mass offshore behemoth that was started by Margaret Thatcher in many ways, but if we have that running the economy, we can't have industry because the credit is sucked up by them. Yep. If we build industry and we're directing credit to that industry, then we cannot tolerate that offshore criminal mass enterprise. Criminal in every sense. They run the drug trade. They run everything like that. And there's nothing productive about it.
Isn't that, and I think that's one of the reasons that they are, if you look what's going on in the world, it seems to be China doesn't get involved themselves in any wars. They're not, trying to, trying to start wars to have in China. Everything seems, the international banksters, the powers that ought not be, have kind of set China up to be the next economic vehicle for their own interests.
China might be induced to get into a war, or it might be a fake incident. God knows what. China could be the next target. These Armageddonists.
Because what I noticed with China is that they set up all these ghost cities that modeled after Western cities. One's Paris and one is like New York City. Nobody's living there, but they set them up almost like they're going to be refuges for people who have to leave countries that are being economically destroyed, and that China is going to be the new center of the golden age. And they like that because China doesn't have a Bill of Rights. So the people that do escape there will be under the thumb of a feudal technocratic state. And
what I could say definitely about the ghost cities is that I wrote a book on this called Breaking Free of Anti-China Psyops. They've got a different approach to development. So the Belt and Road Initiative, the way it works is that they've got this meta design for the general arteries of where they want the development projects to go. But the workers, they plan ahead, so they know that the workers who will be living in these new cities that they're creating need to have amenities and things like that. And they're already like pre-planning for that in 10 years or in 5 years. These places will be inhabited by their own population, and maybe foreigners, who knows, but definitely their own population. But it's just that we're so stuck in a speculative moment to moment sort of economy where we don't think long term anymore, that it's become a very alien thing for us to see these, like, all of these new cities that have been developed. We haven't built a new city since like 1945 or something. Like, there's no new cities in the West. They've got like 500 built up in 20 years. So it's just a different paradigm of thinking. It's not the scare tactics though that the neocons are giving us.
There have been comedians that I listened to, like Kurt Metzger, who went to China and was prepared to see all these horrible things and said, my God, they seem to be far more advanced than we do. They have these mega cities, like you said. They seem to have a new burgeoning middle class that we used to have here in the West. They seem to be, the high speed rail, all the amenities you talk about. They have a higher standard of public transportation. But he says the one thing you don't do there is criticize the government. When the COVID regime cracked down in China, there was it was pretty brutal. Welding people in their apartments and stuff. So there might be
we should have like a whole show on this. Honestly, dude, we can have like a whole show just going through these various psyops, because like that's another one too I was looking into. Brian Berletic treated the what we were shown as the imagery of the people being welded into their apartments. That's actually a fallacy, a magic trick that was done through the cameras and the use of framing, because that was done because they wanted these buildings to have one centralized exit to like monitor people's temperature when they came and left. So all of the side doors within the buildings, there was like several buildings in this one district that they welded because they wanted to control. There's like 18 different exits and entrances. But then we Fox News and the Epoch Times showcased out of context those terrible images and told us how to think and feel about what those were without showing us the actual story. So there's, again, it's like today, right now, the riots are going to be happening. They already are happening, but they're going to be scheduled to spread across the USA, right?
Right.
Already in lockstep, all of the voices of even the alt media are all reframing the narrative to make it seem as though it's China behind all of this. Mm-hmm. China's like instigating these riots. They've infiltrated their military age. That's how they always word it, right? Military age men coming through the border into Biden's secret armies to oversee the dissolution of the USA.
All I know is if there's going to be any attacks happening in the United States that are going to be blamed on Iran, you can bet they're false flag attacks to manufacture consent for this Middle Eastern war.
Which is what Pompeo's just put out there, right? Yeah. So Pompeo's putting it out. It's going to be Russia, China, Iran, some combination of the three that we're told to hate and fear, but it's actually the same people who did 9/11 and who did
tell you a little story about President Grant.
Okay.
When he was out of office after trying to guard the rights of the freed black people in the South, put down the Ku Klux Klan, he finally left office. He had a tough time as president. And he went on a world tour, met with all the world leaders, but their particular important ones were the authoritarian governments of Germany, Russia, China, and Japan. All of those four countries had emperors and had authoritarian governments. The United States was trying to help all of them. We weren't quite too successful with China in the end, but Lincoln and his faction tried to help, especially tried to be equals and friends with China and get railroads and stuff in there. But we did that successfully. So with these other countries, Germany, Japan, Russia, China. So Grant went to Germany, met with Bismarck. A whole bunch of Americans did that. General Sherman avoided Napoleon III in France and said, look, we're for your development. We want Germany to thrive and become a major power and our friend. We're going to stand up against the British Empire. Then he went to Russia, met with the Tsar, Alexander II. This is in July and August of 1878. And at the very same time as he was in Russia, the Philadelphia shipyard was building 4 warships for the Russian Navy. The British were threatening war against Russia at that time over the Turkey-Russia crisis. And so after they got these American warships, the British backed down. Ex-President Grant was in Russia at the time. So this is a demonstration of America's interest in helping. Are they helping autocracies? Is that what Grant was interested in? No, they're spreading the influence of America with its democratic constitution. We want to show that we're better in this idea of human rights, individual liberty, and the liberty of a nation to develop itself, self-government. So we want to show people that our system is better. Well, the way you do that is to be friends with these other countries and have our own country at that very moment in the 1870s in particular. We were building up this immense power of industry, never seen before, and started off building the electrical industry with Edison, sponsored by the nationalists. That's what we were doing to get this influence. What, we say, well, we have to stand with the democracies. Well, what country right now is a democracy, really? There is no such thing right now. But we do have a constitution, and if we would go back and actually get to have a government under that constitution, the wars are all unconstitutional. These crazy. They're devoted to destroying the constitution and the rule of the country by the central banks and by the offshore banks and so forth, and by these secret military companies and stuff. That rule is obviously a berserk war, a war against the Constitution. So if we want to say that we have a better Constitution than China does, they're authoritarians, supposedly, let us go back to our Constitution and show that it's better. It's like the Christian religion or the Jewish religion or, the Muslim religion. Which one is better?
Well, that was what Lessing said, right? With the challenge of
by what we do.
Yeah. He said, let's come back to this argument in 1,000 years, and we'll see who's solved world hunger and war first and most efficiently, and then that can be the best religion. But let's stop fighting about it in the moment.
I'm gonna have to sign off because I have to go to sleep. It's too late for me.
All right,
get up early to do my exercise.
Well, before you leave, I want to share this screen. If you want to, you can go to Thrift Books and find books by Anton Chaitkin, George Bush, the unauthorized biography. Looks like, I think,
classic. That's a classic.
That's where I remember you from.
Who we are. That's a course in history designed for people who want to solve this problem of what to do about people.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, Anton's newest 2 books he just released. So Volume 1 of Who We Are, America's Fight for Universal Progress, and Volume 2. You can get them on. Yeah, they're there. Go to Amazon.com. You can get those. I got them. I read them. They're fantastic.
And Volume 1 also.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's 1 and 2.
The 19th century. The other one is from the founding to the middle 19th century.
Yeah, super vital reading.
600 pages, 48 pages of pictures.
Thank you so much, Anton, for the education and the wonderful conversation.
It was great.
And I hope we can do this again sometime. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Bye, Anton.
Bye, Matt.
Okay. All right. And Matthew, I'm going to quickly run your scroll right here. People can find you, risingtidefoundation.net.
Yeah.
You can find you on Twitter at Matthew Ehret. All the information.
It's Ehret_Matthew. That's the Twitter handle, right? At Ehret_Matthew is Twitter.
Yeah. And you can also go to this wonderful website called CanadianPatriot.org. And you got all kinds of links up here, books to go read, Breaking History, your podcast series of Breaking History is awesome. I try not to ever miss one.
Oh,
especially right. Civil Wars as divide to conquer strategies. There's old Albert Pike. I mean, you go deep into the esoteric there. Yeah. But it's all very, very, very apropos of what's going on today. Everything that's happening today, nothing, like they say, nothing. There's nothing new under the sun.
Nothing new under the sun.
They don't have much of an imagination. And their false flag attacks are always exactly the same as the ones before, and people keep falling for them.
Yeah.
So before you leave, Matthew, I just wanted to say thank you for appearing, and thank you for staying for an hour and 36 minutes. And so let's get. I want to circle back to of what's going on right now with Israel and Iran, and what's going on in Ukraine. And you're suggesting that things are going to get worse before they're going to get better. But I want people to leave on an optimistic note. The way out of this is going to be what?
Oh, you're asking me. I thought you were setting it up for a video or something.
No, I'm setting you up for a final thought.
Well, look, honestly, there's not that many windows to get out of this burning building. There's not that many options in general. Like I know from my research and people who have listened to me today have gleaned my position on this, that the most vibrant living battles against the death cult that have been successful in our living age are coming generally out of the leadership of China and to a certain extent Russia. Less successful, but still successful in those two countries that have given that have pulled the rug out from under the feet of a lot of the deep state operations that have been baked into both of those countries over the course of many decades. And they've revived certain traditions that were once represented by the best of the West before I was born, and probably even before you were born too, frankly. I mean, I don't know if you're probably a little baby when JFK was bouncing around the world, right? Giving his peace speech.
I was born September 5th, 1963. 3 months later, he was assassinated.
Okay, you just, little, right. So you got in there just as a bit of overlap, right? So, like I see these historic continuities that have made humanity viable and good. And I see it represented right now in the Eurasian sphere much more vibrantly. Anton's very positive about Trump's mandate and motive. Mandate, yes, I believe his mandate was very strong. That's the reason why he did win. He did tap into, for the first time in decades, a deep desire in the population to have a future, to have jobs that are meaningful, that come back to America, and to have protectionism and to not have forever wars. All of that is true. That being said, I'm not as confident that Trump is necessarily on the side of angels. I could be wrong. But overall, my orientation is to do everything possible to promote the ideas, as Anton was doing, that will help us to behave in a non-Hobbesian manner with countries that we're otherwise going to be induced to treat as our enemy forever and potentially go to war with on a nuclear level, possibly, which would be very devastating. So there's not many ways out of that. It does mean looking at our past, looking at what's being done in the present to advance humanity and to avoid doing what the oligarchy wants us to do, which is to go tribal, think small, go into survivalist mode alone and nothing else but that, which I would say makes us more easy to pick off in a divide and conquer manner, especially when the oligarchy has developed certain things like directed energy beam weapons in space and shit that we've seen destroy lives in Lahaina, in Hawaii, and other places. So we have to think, I think, on that top-down level. So that's the closest thing to optimism you're going to extract out of me right now is something like that. Sorry.
Thanks, Get Up King, for the $2 super chat. Putin's admission on Tucker that he never talks to presidents, just the CIA says it all.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. Yeah, when he actually said to Tucker, like, "Hey, you applied for the CIA, didn't you?" And Tucker's like, he's very uncomfortable. He's like, "Yeah, right. You didn't get in, sure. Well, let's have a conversation anyway. Take this back to your superiors."
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks everybody for showing up today. I'm going to quickly run this. I'm very bad at doing the self-promotion, but if you want to support me, there's my scroll running up there. As many of you know, I fought against the COVID tyranny. You can go to my Substack and read all about what I did, what I went through. I got 8 tickets for $45,000. So you can support me by going to my Give, Send, Go.
Did you have to pay? Did you have to pay for those? You didn't pay for those, did you?
Well, I was convicted for them, and so I have to pay them. And what they're doing is they're just garnishing all my income tax. So I paid for my first ticket. They garnish my income tax, but it's $47,500. And the weird thing is they keep sending me, the CCRA keeps sending me this stuff for me to contact them, but I'm not contacting them. I'm pretending that it doesn't exist. So I'm not contracting with them. And so they send me these threatening letters that I owe this money, and they say they're going to take away my driver's license as a way of trying to get me to pay these things, but they still haven't done it because I'm not contracting with them. I'm not saying okay. And So I really am not sure exactly what they're going to do, because if they did take away my driver's license, they'd take away my ability to pay these so-called tickets, because that's my job. I'm a trucker.
Mm.
So it's kind of weird. It's all up in the air, but let me see if I can find the paperwork here. It's interesting. So these are the kind of things. So you have failed to pay the following fines by the due date. And so they send you this info number, the amount owing. There's that one ticket, $7,000. And when the offense occurred, the court location, the court office, but they read like speeding tickets. So I don't know how legal they really are. And here's a list. This is -1. But here's a list of all the ones that I had. So
Son of a bitch, eh?
there's the list of all the tickets I have to pay.
All right,
Saturday,
people, give. Yeah.
Look,
Okay. People, give RB a hand. Come on, people. Do your part. Help this guy out.
but, I've been in contact with a guy named James Bowder, who's right now, and this is a true thing, he was one of the people that has helped start the Freedom Convoy. He went to the United States and is seeking political asylum right now. I'm planning to have him on my show soon, probably next week. We're going to talk about it. But he's actually in the United States now seeking political asylum. He's one of the guys, he says that he helped write that memorandum of understanding, that MOU or whatever, during that Freedom Convoy. Remember, it was famous because that was proof of insurrection, but you later withdrew it and said it's a memorandum of understanding. It was never a threat or anything. It was just some kind of thing that everybody could sign and say, we're all with this, because they demanded that Justin Trudeau meet with them and go through their grievances and all that stuff. And if not, he should resign. But so they really went after him, and they're threatening to put him in jail for 15 years and all that stuff. So he's in the United States right now, separated from his wife and family and his job and all that stuff, living in the United States. He's got a lawyer there, a constitutional lawyer, that says they have a good chance to prove this. And so he's going to seek political asylum in the United States of America. He started to give Sengo to. So really weird shit going on in Canada. And we can get into all that, but I just wanted to quickly mention that, and how you can support me and all that stuff. And thank you for showing up this week, Matt. I have to do this again.
Yeah.
We'll wait a few weeks, I think, before we gather again. But and once again, where can people follow you?
CanadianPatriot.org, or my Substack as well, MatthewEhret.substack.com. RisingTideFoundation.net is another place to catch our weekly classes that I moderate and I host with my wife, Cynthia Chung. So there's a lot of stuff that people can tap into if they like big ideas. And just reach out to me if you want to get access to the classes that I host every Sunday, or the new show that I host as well, Pluralia Dialogos, that I host now every Sunday, or every second Sunday. It's going to be one this Sunday at 11 a.m. Contact me. Oh yeah, those are my books. You got my books. Yeah, right. Those are two of my books from the Untold History of Canada series. That's volume 4. And then volume 3 is there with Diefenbaker and Johnson and de Gaulle. Yep, that's volume 3. So yeah, you got those. Hey, that's cool.
Yeah, I did. I haven't read them yet, but I'm going to. Oh, you've disappeared off the screen there. So, oh, that's okay. Well, he's back. You timed out, eh? It's okay. Your microphone's off too. That's okay. All right. Talk to you guys later. Thank you, Matthew. Bye-bye. That was Matthew Ehret, and that was Anton Chaitkin. It was very wide-ranging discussion about how we got here and how we can get out of this moment. But thank you for joining Beyond the Pale. I will be back with another thought-provoking episode soon. Please like, share, and subscribe, and follow me on my X and all that stuff. And you can support me once again. Go to my gifts and go up there or e-transfer me. And I'm doing my best to get the word out that the only way we can get out of this mess is by, nobody's going to come to save you. If you want to know who's going to save you, take a look in the mirror, stand up, fight for your rights, and don't give up, and keep up the fight. And thank you so much for showing up. And until next time, remember, conventional wisdom can get you only so far. If you really want to know the truth, sometimes you have to go beyond the pale. Thank you, everybody. Talk to you later.